Hello and welcome back to my channel. For this card, I am doing a love themed card with lots of hearts for the Lots of Hearts Lawn Phonetics Challenge. I'm starting with a white panel that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I am just cutting little chunks and triangles out of each corner or each side of my panel. I'm doing this to make it look more aged and distressed. Now, when I first started, my triangles that I was cutting out looked a little bit too straight. So I do go back in and I kind of wiggle the scissors a little bit to give more of a wonky line that I'm cutting. And then once I've cut out chunks, I realized that the straight edges needed to be less straight. So I go back in and I start kind of cutting up the corners and making sort of wavy, jagged lines in various places to keep it from looking too neat in those areas. Now, if you want to avoid using scissors, you can try to rip your edges of your paper a little bit. I felt like if I tried that, it probably wasn't going to be straight enough for me. Like, I don't want it completely straight, but I also don't want it to stop looking like a rectangle either. So, now moving on to my ink blending, I have my Distress Oxide in the color Antique Linen, and I am going to go over the entire panel with this color. I'm just trying to go for like a old paper look, which they do have an old paper color. I didn't actually think about that one. I usually just think of the Antique Linen. Alright, now I have brushed corduroy and I'm going over just the edges. I only want it to be a little bit darker around the edges just to add to the worn effect. And then I felt like it still needed a little more, so I pulled out my walnut stain and I am just going the tiniest bit in the areas that have the cutouts. And this is just to help them pop just a little bit more. Looking back on this, I do wish I had splattered the panel or something, but I didn't. Alright, now here I have my Ahoy Matey stamp set from Fawn. And I am stamping all of my images out in brushed corduroy. I did contemplate maybe adding some other stuff that was cut out and put on top of it after it had been colored, but I wanted the whole thing to just look like a map. So it's very basic. I made a mask for the little rocks or whatever they are, and then here I'm just using a scrap of paper that I had on my desk to try to mask off more of an area because I wanted so many of the rocks. Now, after I do the rocks, I'm stamping the palm trees, and basically I was just using anything out of the stamp set that I thought would be found on a map. So I did use the ship, and I know that's not usually found on a map, I guess. And then here I've got my treasure chest. I masked the little part that had the coins because I didn't want to stamp those because I'm going to make hearts on the inside instead. Now, I stamped my X in the same brown shade, which I do go over with red later because I felt like it was just too much brown. And here I'm just stamping the wavy little water lines. This was an afterthought, but I think it helped it out. Now I found this 50% French gray Prismacolor color pencil, and I'm going to make my lines with it. I thought it was the closest color that I had to the color that I stamped. But when I started to make my hearts and stuff, I realized it wasn't quite brown enough, which I knew that, but I had tested out other browns and I didn't like the way it looked. So I am going to go over those lines with my light umber Prismacolor marker. Not marker, nope. Sorry guys. My colored pencil. For this, just make sure that your colored pencils are really sharp. Now here I'm using the Furry and Bright Lawn Fawn stamp set for this little heart. And Lawn Fawn has little hearts in a lot of their stamp sets, so you do not have to have this particular stamp set. I just wanted a tiny one to make the little trail of the boat. Next, I'm going to use this little cluster of hearts from the Scent with Love add-on stamp set from Lawn Fawn. I wanted just some extra hearts because the theme is lots of hearts. Now, because that wasn't enough hearts, I have this solid heart from Art is Magical. I will leave the information in the description box if you want this. It's just a good basic heart stamp set. And I am just making some faint little hearts using the Antique Linen. So that was the first color that I inked the panel with. And I'm just placing hearts here and there just to add more hearts. And then I'm pulling out my heart stencil and I am going to ink it up with the same color. I'm just making sure to keep a fairly light hand. And I'm going over everything, including the images, because again, it needed more hearts. So it's still pretty faint. Next, I took the Crimson Red Prismacolor pencil and I'm going over the X. And that was because I felt like it needed to be red, but I was kind of apprehensive about stamping in red because I didn't think it would show up quite like I wanted it to, but then decided I really wanted it red. I'm also coloring in the little heart trails. I'm not being super careful here. They're so tiny. I was just kind of making circles where it was. Alright, now here, loads of fun. I am going to use your is and an A from that sentiment strip. And I'm also going to use the sentiment Sewn with Love. I'm going to use the word love from Sewn with Love. And I'm going to make my sentiment say, your love is a, and then I'm going to take the word treasure from the Ahoy Matey stamp set and stamp that. So the sentiment will be, your love is a treasure. And in order to mask off those areas, I'm just taking washi tape and covering over what I do not want inked up. I'm inking up the stuff and then I'm pulling the washi tape off. So it's just an easy way to mask off and make whatever sentiment you want. And here you can see my sentiment is a little bit wonky. And I had a feeling that was going to be the case. But I don't mind it too much. Alright, now after I stamped the word treasure, I used a fired brick Distress Oxide, but I really felt like it didn't stand out enough. So here I'm taking the same red, I keep wanting to say marker because I use markers all the time, my red colored pencil, and I'm just creating a sort of shadow for the top part of my sentiment. And then I try the same thing with the word treasure with my brown that I used earlier, but it didn't really do enough. So I do go back over it with the same red colored pencil just to darken it up a little bit. Again, keeping your colored pencil sharp is really important here because some of these lines are fairly small, so you also want to have some amount of accuracy with your lines, and if it's a weird shape, you're not going to get that. Here I'm just coloring in the hearts on the bottom a little bit, and now I have my card base in white. I am going to cover that with the black panel, and then I am going to adhere the little map panel on top. And now those little cutout areas will pop even more because black is behind it. And after that, I did add a little heart on one of the sails on the boat, and I just hand drew that in. It was an afterthought. But there, my card is complete. I tried to go for a slightly more masculine card because I find those difficult for me personally. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be back with another video soon. Thanks for watching. Bye!